Conference Committee report on House files.
Conference Committee report on House File number 2335, an act relating to housing. The report is addressed to the Honorable Melissa Hortman, Speaker of the House, and the Honorable Bobby Joe Champion, President of the Senate. We, the undersigned conferees for House File number 2335, report that we have agreed upon the items in dispute and recommend as follows. The report is signed by 2 out of the 3 members on the part of the House and 2 out of 3 members on the part of the Senate. Howard moves that the report of the Conference Committee on House File number 2335 be adopted and that the bill be repassed as amended by the Conference Committee.
I recognize the author of the bill, Representative Howard, who will explain the Conference Committee report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, this is a home run of a housing bill. And with its passage, thousands of Minnesotans will be able to open the door to their very own home, one they can afford, one that gives them peace of mind, economic security, and a better shot at a hopeful future. This is a big, big deal. It's a truly historic moment in bill, and there are just so many people that I need to thank before describing what's in the bill. First, I want to thank Speaker Hortman for putting her trust in me to chair this Housing Committee. It has been an honor, and to my whole caucus for this opportunity to lead on such an important issue. I want to thank my Vice Chair, Esther Egbaje, who has just been a fierce champion and partner all along the way, and reiterate my thanks to all of our committee members and Minority Lead Johnson. I want to thank our Team Housing. I'm a first-term chair, and it was wonderful to have a team that always seemed to have my back and know how to answer my questions and to do this work together. Adam Kopel, our amazing CA, who deserves credit for being the CA to get both the first 2 omnibus to the finish line here. That's the gold and the silver. I want to thank Abdullahi, our CLA, Molly Peterson, our House researcher, our nonpartisan staff, Justin Cope, Joe Harney, Mary Davis. This team is so dedicated, so talented, and so committed to this work we do, which is going to have an impact on people's lives, and I'm just immensely grateful. I'm also thankful to Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan for putting a bold housing budget together, and I especially want to thank Commissioner Ho for her leadership and her work all this session, and especially in these last few steps as we work together to come to agreement on a truly transformational bill. The team at Minnesota Housing is also a group that is talented and committed to this work. Many folks that have been doing this work in Minnesota Housing for years and now have the opportunity to help implement this amazing, bold budget. I have to thank Ryan Baumtrog, Dan Kitzberger, Lael Robertson, and Amanda Welliver for their talents, their time, their work this session together. I know we're not supposed to talk about the other body, but I also need to thank my partner in the Senate, Senator Lindsay Port, and her CA, Davin Suckup, and her amazing staff. I had a reporter ask me the other day, what are sort of the hang-ups, negotiation, what are the tough parts you're trying to work through? And, you know, I had to pause a minute and say, that's really not the approach we've taken, in part because we shared a vision and shared a collaborative problem-solving mindset. It was a partnership all across the way to get to this bill, and it's a better bill. Okay, I'll stop gushing about the Senate now. The other folks I need to thank is there's so many fingerprints on this bill for people that have been leading on housing, not just this session, but for years and years and years. First and foremost, I want to thank our former chair, Alice Hausman. In many ways, Alice was the originator of what I would say is this push over the last many years to finally take real action on housing. We wouldn't be here at this moment without Alice. And I want to thank the Homes for All Coalition, a group of advocates from all across the state that really rose up, banded together many years ago after a session when nothing happened on housing. Their work has helped lead us to this point, and I want to thank a few specific leaders in that movement that have been working tirelessly for years: Libby Murphy, Carrie Johnson, Michael Dahl, Annie Shapiro, and there are so many more. And I want to thank all the Minnesotans who came and testified this session and shared your stories. We are listening. That is at the center of why we're taking action on this bill. This is your victory as well. And it's your work that have brought us to this historic moment. We are taking this historic step because, members, the status quo of our housing market is failing Minnesota. Minnesotans are looking for a starter home and coming up empty. There's such a scarcity of affordable rental housing that family homelessness is up over 200% in Hennepin County, and 500,000 Minnesotans can't afford their homes. The housing market has failed in greater Minnesota. There's simply not the workforce housing being built that we need, and Minnesota has one of the worst racial homeownership gaps in the country. We as a legislature could say, you know, hashtag not our problem. This is an issue that shouldn't be addressed at the legislative level. This isn't our role. Of course, that's what we've largely been doing. In one of my first years here at the legislature, we spent more new money to house animals at the Minnesota Zoo than we put into the Minnesota housing budget. But this is a new day. This bill represents our most ambitious historic effort to address our housing crisis, investments that begin with a B, making huge strides all across our housing continuum, from preventing homelessness to creating new pathways to home ownership. And I want to share the highlights of what is included in this bill. First, I am so proud that for the first time ever, we are funding state-based rental vouchers to help provide housing stability for thousands of families all across the state. This is the Bring It Home Minnesota housing plan that so many members have co-signed onto and worked over many years. When we brought this bill to the floor, I mentioned that there are over 200,000 children living in cost-burdened homes. And what our Bring It Home Minnesota housing voucher will help fill the gap created where the federal government is missing its mark in terms of funding Section 8 housing vouchers. That transformational piece for Minnesota families to be able to afford stable housing will be life-changing, and this bill will fund more than 5,000 of those vouchers for families every year into the future. It is an absolute life-changing game changer. Two, we're investing in supportive housing. We're creating an innovative new program championed by our Commissioner, Jennifer Ho, to support the housing providers who are doing some of the most heaviest lifting for our most vulnerable Minnesotans with strengthening the supportive housing model. We're also investing in resources to stabilize some of the housing providers who were hit the hardest during the pandemic. Resources that will be put right back into the housing that will improve the experience for those Minnesotans that they care about, Minnesotans that they serve. Members, this is the most ambitious bill the legislature has ever seen to produce more housing, which is so critical. We need to build more homes. We have one of the largest gaps, supply-demand gaps, and more than half of this bill will be directed to housing production, from rental housing to home ownership to manufactured housing from border to border. $200 million in housing infrastructure bonds, nearly $100 million in challenge, two of the most flexible tools that will build housing all across the state. We are making significant investments to build new homes to own, an area that Chair Hassan has led on with home ownership investment grants. And we're, for the first time ever, putting real dollars to preserve the affordable homes we already have, almost $100 million in our NOAA Impact Fund. This is going to prevent the displacement of thousands of Minnesota residents and have such an impact. We're also taking a statewide approach, making significant investments in greater Minnesota with a 10 times increase in funding specifically directed to greater Minnesota for workforce housing and a new innovative infrastructure program that will help communities pay for the infrastructure they need as they invest in new affordable housing. Members, this is also the most ambitious bill to create new homeowners that the legislature has ever seen. Vice Chair Agbaje has done so much heavy lifting and leading to create a nation-leading first-generation home ownership down payment assistance program. We invest $100 million in that program. It will create more than 4,000 new first-generation homeowners. We also have significant other down payment assistance resources in this bill. And as I mentioned, we're building more homes. We need to produce more homes along with providing that assistance. Over $60 million specifically directed to build new affordable single-family homes. I mentioned manufactured housing. Representative Norris has led tremendously as we invest in infrastructure grants and other programs designed to help both rehab, improve, and create more manufactured housing, our state's largest source of affordable home ownership. And members, we're not leaving this session without making ongoing investments to address our housing crisis. This bill does include a 1/4 cent Metro-wide sales tax that will be used to fund the most pressing affordable housing challenges in our 7-county metro area. These funds will help us build 1,000 new units of affordable rental housing and 1,000 new units of affordable homeownership, providing those resources largely to the cities and counties that know the unique challenges in their community. In addition, that resource will help us fund the rental vouchers that I talked about earlier. Members, whether we're talking about narrowing the achievement gaps in our schools, whether we're talking about creating economic security or improving health outcomes, all roads truly lead back to home. This bill is historic, will make such a difference, and I look forward to the debate and discussion this afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Discussion on the adoption of the conference committee report. Representative Nash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And well, Chair Howard, I love a good baseball reference. I would disagree that this is a home run. I might categorize this more as about 5 or 6 foul balls followed by chasing a ball that's down and away and striking out. I think that if I did my math correctly, about 17% of the total bill goes to actually build new houses. And I think that the imposition of a sales tax is troubling. You know, we've beat this one for a long time. Members, I would urge a no vote for a lot of reasons. That this really doesn't fix the inventory problem that we have. It doesn't. And we haven't done any regulatory reform on how to do that. And we talked about that on Housing Bill Day, so I won't belabor that point either. But I will say, Mr. Chair, that my North Star analogy is true, I think, and people believe that, but we're missing the mark here. We're not building enough homes. We're not fixing some of the regulatory issues. We're putting too much money into effectively renting people apartments when I worry about what happens if we see a downturn in the economy and what happens then. I really worry about overtaxation on this issue, and for that reason and many, many others, I am going to urge a no vote, but I will say I appreciate the openness and the frank dialogue that we've had. I appreciate you keeping the translation piece in the bill because that's important for people who are going to enter into contracts relative to either going to an apartment or seeing some formal document that gets put in front of them that you kept that provision in there because they should be able to have that translated into their first language. So I will urge members to vote no. It is indeed chasing a pitch down and away for a strikeout. Thank you.
The member from Anoka, Representative Scott.
Thank you, Speaker Hortman. And Representative Howard, over the weekend I had the opportunity to speak with one of the builders up in the North Metro, and they have purchased some land to develop in Somerset, Wisconsin. And what he told me is he can build the same house in Somerset, Wisconsin for $20,000 less. And until we start addressing what some of the core issues that are preventing home ownership are, such as excessive codes and requirements that go into building a house in Minnesota, we're not going to fix the inventory problem. And this bill does nothing toward that. Members, it's not a good bill. It's raising taxes in the metro area unnecessarily. None of at least my county of Anoka did not ask for a tax increase countywide. We don't need another new tax. We've got a $17.5 billion surplus. And would Representative Howard yield for a question, Madam Speaker?
He will. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Howard, I sit on Ways and Means, and at every committee meeting that we've had going over all these budget bills, we've had an amendment that goes on that whenever we're giving money to nonprofits, it addresses some oversight over those nonprofits. And I saw on both the Veterans Bill and on this one that language was removed. And I'm wondering, Representative Howard, if you could address the reasoning for removing language that would oversee the money, the billions of dollars, I believe, this legislative session going to nonprofits.
Representative Howard.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Scott. As I understand, and in consultation with folks, You're on Ways and Means. We did this sort of for every budget bill. As I understand, we're going to take an approach where that is going to be in the state government bill applying to the entire overarching budget. So it's a matter of efficiency. I think we'll have it in one place in the state government bill versus littered through all these omnibus bills.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative Howard, thank you for that. I think it's a really important amendment that was added on each bill, and I understand wanting to put it just once in the statute book so we're not printing more books unnecessarily. But I know that our side of the aisle will be watching for that language to show up in the state gov finance bill. It's really important language. We are seeing money going to nonprofits this session in unprecedented fashion, and I don't know how we're going to keep up with it, even with that language, but with the oversight of it. But I think that's really important language. Members, please vote no.
The member from Chisago, Representative Johnson. I'm sorry, the member from Isanti, Representative Johnson.
Madam Speaker, members, Representative Howard, I'm really disappointed in this bill. You called it a home run. It might have gone over the fence near the left field foul pole, but it was left of it. It was a foul ball. One thing that we talked about on our side of the aisle in committee was accountability. Representative Scott brought up the fact that not only that piece, what was in both the House and the Senate file, mysteriously disappeared in the conference committee report. It was an agreed upon language that's gone. Holding accountability nonprofits to make sure they're using the funds properly. In fact, earlier this year, we received the OLA report on nonprofit organizations receiving grants. And accountability was a big issue. In fact, a couple of the highlights is statutes provide little authority to enforce state agencies' compliance with grant management requirements or require corrective action when agencies are non-compliant. That was an easy thing to fix, yet it's not there. And the other recommendation is the legislature should increase external oversight of grant management in the executive branch agencies, which means we need to hold our executive branch accountable. We are the fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of this state. And there was an amendment put on in the original bill that was taken out in conference committee that gave us that oversight. Again, a foul ball. That's just some of the things that are missing in this bill. There's nothing in this conference committee report to increase our housing stock. Minnesota has one of the lowest housing stock in the country. We're way short. We need a lot of new housing. But in this bill, out of $1 billion, maybe 17% max could be used for new houses, and that includes some rental. 17% out of $1 billion is only for new housing stock. That's not helping the citizens of Minnesota, especially those in greater Minnesota where we have a big issue. Very little to help out of $1 billion for workforce housing. You go to any city across this great state outside of the 7-county metro area, that's what they're asking for. That's what they need. Earlier today, I checked on Indeed for employment. There was over almost 125,000 job openings on Indeed this morning. A lot of those companies have specialty requirements. Looking for the right person. They finally find that person, but there's no place for them to live because they don't live in that area, so they cannot take the job. That doesn't help our small-town communities. It actually hurts them. Yes, you did increase the amount, but it was drastically short of what it needs. Some other issues we have with the OLA report. One of the things they said is it's not a good idea to name a particular nonprofit to get the funding. Yet in this conference committee report, there's 13 nonprofits specifically named to receive funds, totaling over $150 million. And they can use 10% of that for a minimum for administration fees. That's $1.5 million. And then probably the most egregious thing that they did in this bill is they're increasing taxes. We have $17.5 billion surplus, and you're increasing taxes. Granted, it's only 0.25%, but guess what? When you pay that bill, they always round it up. So if it's $4.01, you pay the same tax you pay on $8. Because you round up. $4 would be a 1 penny. $4.02 would be 2 pennies, because you round up. And the taxes in the 7-county metro area, which is especially hard on those that you're trying to help, because the vast majority of this fund is going to go to Minneapolis and St. Paul. You can see that in how the bill is written. In fact, it says at one point in this bill, although the statute says it should be evenly divided across the state, but there's a rider on there. If more help is needed in the metro area, they can defer the funds to that area. The needs across the state are many, but what is needed is different. This bill is specifically tailored to just one area of the state, with the vast majority of the funds going to that, mostly rental. We need to change that. All this is giving money, handing out money and not helping people. Gives them a short-term help, but doesn't make them help them get out of their situation, to help them help them make their lives better. Members, this bill has a long ways to go to get where it's usable, and it will actually help the vast majority of Minnesotans. Let's send this back to conference committee so we can actually have a conference committee. We met and did the side-by-side last Monday. The next time we met and that the minority heard anything was last night at 9:15 when an agreement had been reached. Conference committee did not meet and talk about any of the issues. No opportunity for me, the only member on that conference committee report that represents the 80 counties outside the metro area, could talk, defend some of the positions, offer amendments to make it better, and for the greater Minnesota actually have a voice in what was going on in the housing bill. It's very disappointing. I would say everybody should send this back so that all of Minnesota has a voice in what's going on in this conference committee, instead of a couple people telling us how it's going to be. So please vote red and send this back to conference committee. Thank you.
The member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Is Representative Cleaborn on the floor? I don't see her at her desk. But I
She's
wonder
not.
if she's
Representative New Brindley.
Is Representative Hewitt on the floor? Or is he
He's not.
back?
Representative New Brindley.
All right, so we don't have anyone who can actually confirm that there will be accountability language somewhere. Is there anyone who can confirm?
Representative Howard can confirm that.
Well, he already, Representative Howard confirmed that it is not in this bill, and he confirmed that his understanding is that it will be in the state government bill. So I was hoping to ask our state government folks if it is indeed their intention to include it in the state government bill, because I'll be honest, you know, we talked a lot about accountability, and that was the one thing that every Republican wanted to make sure, that we had nonprofit accountability in all of these bills. And now the very first bills we're seeing, we're removing the accountability language for our nonprofits. And it's nice that we have this idea that we think it's going to be in a bill later, but I'd like confirmation on that. That's a big deal, because if we don't know that it's going to be in that bill later, this bill should go back to conference now and get fixed. This bill right now in its current form has zero accountability for all of the money it is sending to nonprofit organizations, none. And it is raising taxes, not just any tax. This is raising sales tax 0.25%. It is the most regressive tax we can put into place in this state. We are taxing low-income Minnesotans more than we are taxing high-income Minnesotans. That's what happens with a sales tax. Because as it turns out, people who don't have very much money spend every penny of it. And now they're going to pay more of it in taxes instead of on the goods and services they need. This bill is not ready for prime time. With all of its fanfare and adulation, it's a farce. We're raising taxes on people who can't afford it, and we're not doing anything to actually change the drivers, to actually change why it is so expensive to build homes in the state of Minnesota, why it costs 20 to 30% more to build a house in the state of Minnesota than it does in any of our surrounding states. This bill doesn't touch that. Instead, we're going to raise taxes so the government can subsidize it instead of fixing the problem. It's absurd. Madam Speaker, I'd like a roll call on this vote, please.
Representative New Brindley requests a roll call. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative New Brindley.
And with that, I would strongly suggest a no vote to send this bill back to conference committee, get rid of this tax nonsense, and add some accountability. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Seeing no further discussion on the Howard motion to adopt the conference committee report, the clerk will take the roll on the motion. The clerk will close the roll. There being 70 ayes and 61 nays, the motion prevails. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended by conference.
House File Number 2335, third reading as amended by conference.
Third reading as amended by conference. Discussion to passage. The member from Dakota, Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Oink, oink, oink. Yet again, we have another failure from the DFL this session. Despite a record budget surplus, we have the Democrats coming to us again, raising taxes. There's nothing new here, members. There's nothing historic. There's nothing ambitious. In fact, it's the same old, same old. Same old tax increases, same old liberals, same old Democrats.
Further discussion on passage. The member from Hennepin, Representative Howard.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to mention a few things from the debate and then look forward to our vote. First, related to the question about oversight, I have talked with our leaders, and this will be in the state government bill. One piece I'll note is a reason for that is we can make a statutory change versus a session law change. This makes the oversight stronger. I would think that's something we can all support. During the debate, it was raised that there isn't enough, there was some bad math, to put it kindly, about how much in this bill goes to production. More than half of the resources in this bill will help produce more units of housing. There was a question about the metro-wide sales tax and where that resource goes. We do have some runs we can get out, but this will be accessible all across the 7-county metro area. I would encourage folks to talk to your cities, talk to your counties. They are desperate to have resources. They know the community needs. There isn't the resource there. This sales tax will go directly to cities and counties to address the unique affordable housing challenges in their community. It's why more than 24 local elected officials from across the state, or from across the metro area, have put a strong letter of support. This is going to make a big difference in the long term. And to the piece about Greater Minnesota, members, this is sort of a put up or shut up moment if you want to support housing in Greater Minnesota. No bill that this legislature has ever considered has put more money directly into funding housing in Greater Minnesota. Let me say that again. There has never been a bill that this legislature has considered that would invest more funding in Greater Minnesota housing. This caucus, this team has prioritized funding for housing because when you actually talk to folks in Greater Minnesota, you hear that the free market has failed. You need public resource to fill the gaps, to make financing work, to build housing in Greater Minnesota. That's what we're doing in this bill. And members, I do get a little tired of hearing this sort of notion about we need to focus on this or that. You know how many bills that the other side of the aisle introduced that were referred to our committee this year to address housing? 3 bills. I was looking forward to getting bills heard and introduced and have that discussion. Members, you need to introduce bills if you want to solve these problems. This bill says we're going to work together and take on these challenges head on. It is historic and it will make a difference. As I close, I want to read a story from somebody who submitted theirs to us, and it's something I think we need to do more of, which is truly put ourselves in the shoes of the Minnesotans we are working to serve in this body. And so I want you, as I read this story, to put yourselves in the shoe of Amanda. Amanda is a mother of 3, a single mother of 3, and she told us this story. She said, "I support creating a new Minnesota voucher program created in this bill because I have personally seen the transformational impact vouchers have. I have 3 kids, and we have experienced homelessness and housing insecurity. What changed all of this is when I received a voucher. I was able to move into a 3-bedroom, 2-bath apartment that provided enough space and stability for my family. My kids now go to a great school, and it has a huge impact on their lives. My youngest daughter is in 1st grade, and after missing half of kindergarten, she started not being able to read or write. Now she's caught up. Now my girl can read a whole book and write her name. My middle schooler has special education needs, and having a stable house has improved his emotional and social skills. He now has the confidence to be in the same classroom as his peers. My oldest son now gets to just be a high schooler, hanging out with his friends and playing on the football team. All of this is possible for my family because we have a voucher." Members, please think about that. Think about families in your district all across the state that are maybe working 2 jobs, maybe staying up late and working the night shift and not getting home from bedtime because the cost of housing is crushing. A voucher like the one that Amanda described, with this vote, we can make that life-changing voucher available to more than 5,000 Minnesota families every year. It is an amazing opportunity to use the power we have in this body to use it for something so powerful, which is the power of having a home that you can afford. Members, the last thing I want to say is that this bill is a beginning, not an end. It is the first step, the first time that this legislature has made a commitment anywhere near the scale or the scope of the problem we face across our state. But let this not be a step. Let this be a stride forward as we sprint to address our challenges in the affordable housing space, not just now, but into the future. The American dream evokes something different for many of us, but I think a lot of us believe that it begins at home. A place that is ours, a place that is safe, where we are free. But that dream is simply out of reach for far too many Minnesotans. In passing this bill, we unlock that dream for so many Minnesotans across the state. And I have to be honest, it kind of feels like a dream to get to carry this bill with all of you. And I ask you to dream with me and vote yes.
The clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 70 ayes and 61 nays, the bill is passed as amended by conference and its title agreed to.